Our next speaker, it has already joined us. It will be Lewis Richardson, ex-chief storyteller at IBM and the corporate story coach. Lewis is here to talk to us about the compass that doesn't point north and discuss the various applications of stories he's seen and practiced while at IBM and in his coaching activities. So, Lewis, I'm waiting for you live, and here you are. So, Lewis, thank you for joining us. We're all yours.
Well, listen, I appreciate it, Artem. We're going to start off with just a quick video, if you don't mind, Artem, just queuing that up, and then I'll take it from there.
Of course.
How can we sail to an island that nobody can find? With a compass that doesn't work?
Aye, the compass doesn't point north. But we're not trying to find north, are we? We should drop canvas, sir. She can hold a bit longer. What's in your head has put you in such a fine mood, Captain? We're catching up.
Now, please tell us how is this relevant to your experience of time?
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Artem. First, and just so that we know, the thing that caught me most about that particular movie clip was the fact that there's this idea that things point north. And this is a story a conversation that you as a story officers need to have with your leaders and those you lead. Often the thing you're looking for with that story, the compass pointed to the thing that the holder wanted most. And that's something that you have to understand where that's at. Artem mentioned I was a chief storyteller at IBM for a period of time. And that was one of the things that we struggled with sometimes, is understanding what is it that the people are actually looking for, rather than what are we looking for. So there's some false norths we want to go through, and I'll try to go through this quickly, and I apologize because I'm rushing, but the first thing that's a false north is that we're trying to get people to buy something. And even if you have an idea, a product, a service, or whatever, your objections should not be for them to try to, for you to make profit from it, or for get them to make a buying decision, a buyer's journey. It's about getting them to believe something. If you get them to believe something, they'll buy into whatever it is you've got. So the object is to think about, how do I get them to believe things? And that includes every conversation you have, every engagement that you have. You have to understand at the beginning of the conversation that you're going to have, what is it they believe about the topic or the subject or the idea, and what is it you want them to believe when you're done? And that's the belief gap. That's what you got to do. If they're vehemently against something and you think you're going to try to get them to be your best proponent, that's too big of a gap sometimes, especially if you got like 20 minutes. Sometimes you just want to make them aware of it and make them think of, maybe this is an opportunity. They really like something a lot. You want to bring them to a point where they look at you as an option, and that they'll think about you, and that they'll entertain another visit with you. So that's, from start to finish, that's kind of your target for is belief gap. Often, and you'll have to excuse me because I'm coming from a practical standpoint of a storyteller as a process of a company trying to maybe move product or move services or get an idea across. So I came from a chief storyteller job, which was a sales job. I had a quota. I had to have people make buying decisions, but it wasn't about getting them to buy. It was about getting them to believe to the point that they made a commitment. And often in those situations, you'll find that people will talk about their product or their service or their idea, and they'll say, our product does amazing things. And when you're taking a story concept, it's not about what products or service, what your product or service does. It's important. It's about what people can do because your product or service exists. So you don't talk about your features, but you talk about how the life is going to change for them because your product or service exists. It's different than education. It's more about enchantment. It's different than just telling them, here's the things that this thing does. It's about having them vision and envision what it would be like if they had what you are proposing to them as a new way of doing things. And so don't focus on your product, focus more, or your idea, focus on more on what that means to the audience that you're speaking to. And often that's done in points. And one of the things I speak a lot to and coach on is this idea that you start off with something interesting, you get interest. It's just a matter of turning their head, saying something in a way that they've never heard it before. For instance, with the movie there, with the Pirates of the Caribbean, you might have been thinking, what does it have to do with it? In fact, Artem, that was your opening question. What does this have to do with anything? It was interesting. Now the question is, what's the relevance to that? Well, the relevance is about the compass and about where your heart is. So I've showed interest and relevance, and now I can start talking about vision and credibility. This is where, this is what we do. This is how we do things. This is the way we can help you get to where you need to go. And then you have the last conversation you have is one on just confirmation. In a lot of sales, in these believers' journeys, it's a matter of you're interested, you see that it's relevant, you know that we can get you there. Let's just go. Let's do that. And so it's that kind of concept of a journey of belief. If you're in a corporate environment now and you're selling a product or service and you have presentations that you do, or you look at presentations, I would wager that in the second or third slide, you have a slide about all your company and how long it's been around and all the logos that you do and all that. You've jumped to vision and credibility and you haven't even addressed interest and relevance yet. And so it's very important that you make sure that make it interesting, make it relevant, and then you can start talking about what your product and service does. Another false north, I think this will be just the third one we'll do is don't settle for requirements. People will tell you this is what I need, and they'll give you a requirement. Don't get a requirement, get a story. If they give you a requirement that fits a product description or fits a feature, that's not the important part. The important part is what are we trying to achieve here? It's not that you think you need this. Tell me a little bit about that in your life. When that works, what does that look like? Or when it doesn't work, what does that look like? And what I've loved to find out is when I go into organizations and I ask them, well, tell me a story about that. It's not infrequent that the people I'm talking to have no idea what we're talking about. They're there to purchase something. They're executives. They don't know how the inner workings work. And it's often the case, I'll say, well, what does that look like when it's broken? And they'll go, well, or give me an example of when it broke. And they go, well, Mary would know that. And I'll say, well, can I speak to Mary? I'd love to talk to Mary because I'd love to hear the story. And either there's two cases of that. If they don't know this, they can't tell you that. Either they don't know it, which is easy to fix. You can find the person, or they don't trust you. And if people will not share stories with you, they don't trust you. People give requirements to vendors, they give stories to friends. And so if you can get someone to start telling their story, telling about how things happen, how things broke, how things are better, their vision of what they're looking for, those kind of things, you will win. You'll get some progress there. And that's what stories kind of help you do is not so much about telling stories. In some cases, it's about digging for stories. Don't tell me the thing that you think you need. Tell me what that means to you. Tell me what it would look like if it worked or if it didn't work. That gives you the idea of how to then reshape the story into something that they can believe and they can live in. And then something I do too is whenever you're getting that story, listen. When they're talking to you, listen to understand. Don't listen to reply. All too often, we know the answer. They're asking a question. We've got it prepared. We've got the answer. We want to jump in and give them the answer. Just be quiet. I am a big fan of notebooks. And in my notebook, often I'll write the word wait, W-A-I-T, which stands for why am I talking? That's to tell me not to talk. So I'm taking notes while the person's talking. And sometimes I just type wait because I am anxious to jump in when really I should be listening more. And so those are some things. So the false north that you have is that people think that you're trying to get them to buy. It's a buyer's decision. It's not. It's a believer's decision. It's a believer journey. It's not all about your products. It's about what people can do with your products. And last, it's not about requirements. It's about stories. Now, excuse me, some tools for you to use. And I'm sorry, I'm going through this kind of fast because I know I'm running time here, but some tools that you can use.
Okay.
Language. Okay. Be very specific about the words you use. In English, a lot of people will start off their time with a customer or with a prospect or an audience. They'll say, "Well, for the next 20 minutes, I'd like to talk to you about production." When you say those words or the equivalent of those words, you're telling them your brain can go to rest now because I'm going to talk and you're just going to listen. So you can just sit back and listen. You've given them permission to shut down because you said, I'm going to talk to you, or for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to speak on this. And these are pet peeves of mine, and I'm a little over it. But the point is, if you invite them in, every time you have a chance to be with an audience of any size, you can say, for the next 20 minutes, I'd like to explore something with you. I'd like for us to look at some ideas or play around with some ideas, some things you might probably already thought of, some things you may not have thought of that we can discuss, some things you might agree with, things you don't, but we're gonna work on that. Let's have a conversation and let's have a time in which we can kind of share some things. That's a totally different thing than I'm going to stand here and talk for a monologue for 20 minutes while you listen. It's a very much of a difference in even the atmosphere. One of the focuses, I'm just going to deliver information, you're going to receive it. The other focuses on, I'm going to connect with you. And I noticed some of the earlier speakers talks about connecting. It's very important that they feel connected, that you're part of them. And there's an old story about, you can tell audience by the way, our audience from a conversation by the way the chairs are facing. If the chairs are facing each other, you're kind of speaking to an audience, but if your chairs are both facing the same way, it's more of a conversation. And when you're in front of an audience, granted, you are facing in different directions, but you as the speaker, as a storyteller in a conversation, if you think more of them as being alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, and you're looking in a direction together and you're painting a picture that you're both seeing, even if that's in your mind, that's your language will show that. So language is important. Use stories, which is part of this conference. I mean, it's just stories are the envelope in which meaning is held. There's meaningful things that if I just told you that being persistent is important, I don't know how long you'll remember that, but if I told you the story of the tortoise and the hare, you'd go, okay, that means about being persistent, about just keep going. We embed meaning inside of stories, and that's the way we as humans learn things and carry on things and carry on traditions. If you take your corporate information, which is usually bullet point after bullet point, and encapsulate that somehow into a meaningful story, it will go so much further. People will remember things. And all of our great leaders have been great storytellers. And the people who have great stories, they have an unfair competitive advantage. There's a guy, Bill Gurley, said that if you're a great storyteller, you have an unfair competitive advantage. And I'll take a competitive advantage anyway, anytime I can. In fact, I've told sales teams before, I said, if you have a great product, a wonderful product, and a mediocre story, and I have a mediocre product and a great story, I will win the business every day. I will beat you. Because people, Seth Godin said, people are not buying goods and services, they're buying stories and relations and magic. That's what they're buying. And so if you have amazing products and horrible stories, that's where you have the opportunity as a chief story officer to step up. And so let's make our stories as amazing as our products. So the tools are language. Just watch what you're saying, how you're saying it, and how you're listening for the most part. Listen for words that you can use as you rebuild their stories. They tell you a story. If you can reshape it into the way that they can envision it, that your product or service or idea helps them get there, then they can adopt it. And of course, stories are a great thing to do. How to tell if it's working. I've listened in and watched some of the comments about people about it failing and how hard it is, and it is. And I'll tell you a little bit of that later, quickly. But if the customers are starting to finish the stories themselves, you win. Okay, if you can say, well, if we did this and if that happened and whatever, then you would be able to. And if they finish your sentence, they've got it. Okay. Writers, TV directors, all these people do these things where you watch the TV show and you know what the end is, and it's like you feel good because you picked the right person. That's the person who did it. You win something. I have a 12-year-old granddaughter, Lily, and at holidays we sit around a table as a family and pour out a 1,000-piece puzzle, and we start putting the puzzle together. And she can't do it. She's at the time she was 4, and she could not do that. But we would save the last piece for her, and it was Lily's piece. And when the puzzle was done, almost over, it's just that one piece, we call Lily, Lily, come in here. And she'd climb up on the table, hands and knees on top of the puzzle into that spot. And she'd take the little piece and she'd move it around and she'd click it into place. And she did the puzzle. Lily thought that she did the puzzle. That same feeling is what your customers will have, or your audiences will have, if you can craft a story in such a way that they can finish it off. I teach whiteboarding. The best whiteboarding sessions I've ever had, I start off doing something on a whiteboard, and by the end, I'm sitting down and the customer has the pen and they're whiteboarding. That's when you win, when they start finishing the story for you. So that's what that looks like. The challenges, I've seen a lot of questions about challenges and problems we go through, and these I'm going to tell you are things that I've lived. I was a chief storyteller for almost 15 years. Be careful. The people around you are very accustomed to the North that they know and the way that they've always done it and the status quo. If they do something differently, if they somehow adopt your ideas and think the stories are going to be good, it's risky for them because they feel like if it doesn't work, they'll be blamed. If they keep doing the same thing over, even if they fail, they feel like it's not as risky. So understand that what you're asking them to do is to take a different approach, and you have to lead them and you have to show them how it works and even help them, make it work. Rather than just saying, go out there and add some stories and it'll be good for you. And another thing is, this is when you have to tread carefully. They may not yet be able to tell stories as good as you can or as well as you can, and you might be seen as a risk, as a threat. Okay, because I've been with executives before, and when asked to present product information, or I've been asked to do it instead of them. And I'm 3 levels below them, and they begin to wonder, why is Lewis getting this profit? I should be speaking. I'm the vice president of whatever, and it's been a challenge. In fact, I had a manager one time tell me, "You seem to do well. People love you. I just don't have any idea what you're doing." That's a risk, and that's a very dangerous place for you to be. So, I mentioned in a comment on a previous session, "Orbiting the Giant Hairball" is a great book about how to survive in a situation if you're creative. I highly recommend you look it up. And I actually did a YouTube video one time about that, that you could find if you just look me up. So, but it's fun, but it's not without its challenges. And so that's about the gist. Artem, I know I don't know how much more time I have. And I know that's been fast, and I apologize for those who have the language translation. I spoke very quickly. But we'll go with that. Artem?
It's all good.
It's all good.
Yeah, I will need
Yeah,
you
I
to
will
turn
need
off the
you
mic
to
so
turn
it
off
doesn't
the
double.
mic so it doesn't double.
Yeah, it was good and fast paced, yes, but very practical. And I like the part where you say you're expressing how it's important to save the last piece of the story for the listener. And as you can see, the fires are burning, so people are here and following us. It's awesome. There's actually a question for you from Michelle, who's very active with great questions throughout the conference. Thank you so much. From your experience, when the time passed, do people remember the stories, or do they remember the people they shared with them?
It's interesting that they remember the stories. In fact, I one time shared with a sales team. We had a competitor that was very nasty about talking about our products badly, and they were always disparaging our products. And sometimes our sales people would take their products and talk bad about them as well. And I told them one time, I said, it's very important that you don't wrestle with a pig, because you both get dirty and only the pig loves it. And just to let them know, don't fall into that trap. Okay. Years later, I'm walking down a corridor at a conference with an executive vice president standing next to me. And one of those reps that heard that years before came up to me and said, "Hey, Lewis, hi, you're that pig guy." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And the executive turned to me as he passed. He said, "What was that about?" And I said, "Don't worry, Jeff. He remembered it. As long as he remembers it, that's fine." So often people are more easily attached to a story. They can relate to a story much better than they can just relate to facts. So yeah.
Yeah, being the story guy is, yeah, I can feel that too. I some time ago I did this gig where we had activity after lunch, and I had to start with some kind of energizer, and I asked people to perform a very short exercise where they tell each other stories about where they got their shoes from. And the first had to be real, the second story had to be something that you made up, and the last story had to be a fairy tale. And then we did like 2 hours of deep dive, reflective, very thought-provoking experiences about purpose, vision, values. And then I read a post online where this girl who was at this event, she just summarized all the other speakers did, and then she writes, Artem did a great gig with the shoes. And I'm like, oh, this is so painful. I mean, being remembered for the like as the peak guy was, I totally second that.
So, but being remembered is important. It's more important. They'd say it's not what they hear, but what they understand. I think it's what they remember. Because if they will go tell that story again to someone else, then your message is getting projected. If you say something in a way that they don't have to remember bullet points, but they just tie it all together into a story, even if they don't get it perfectly right, they'll get the gist across. And I am going to ask an embarrassing question here. How much time do I have? Do I have 2 minutes left? Do I have any time left?
Yeah, we've got like
we've
2-3
got
minutes
like
before
2-3
the
minutes
second- the
before
next
Two, 3
speaker.
minutes?
Yes,
the next
of course.
speaker. Yes, of
All right.
course.
So with that amount of time, what I'd like to do is just let people know that I, first of all, very sorry for the setup in the front. I put my email address in the chat, so please feel free to reach out to me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. For anyone who's listening to this, if you'd like some more time, or you have some questions, or even if you're just saying, "Oh, look, I'm a corporate story officer. I just would like to run some things by you," please reach out. You've invested some time in me. I would love to pay that back to you, just give that back to you. And I enjoy doing this now. I'm at that point where I'm just loving to talk to people of like mind that are struggling. And if I can offer some assistance, that's great. So just reach out to me and say, look, I was at the story conference and I heard you, but here's some things I really like to talk to you about. And maybe I can send you some content, or maybe we can just have a talk, whatever. But again, I appreciate the opportunity. Artem, you're always awesome with this, and I will try to have this better before the chat tomorrow. So we'll figure. Or
It's all
Friday,
right.
excuse me.
It's all right.
Quick question from me
quick
before I
question
let you
from me
go.
before I let you go.
The traditional question
The
I ask.
traditional question I ask:
If there was only
if
one
there was only one
area or task that you could apply story to, as a story coach or a chief storyteller, which area would you choose in an organization and why?
An area or task. I think story is about moving people in belief, and I think it can apply anywhere. It's hardest to apply it in a company, but you can apply it as a parent. You can apply it as a teacher, to move people along a journey, to move them from where they're at now to something better, using story to do that. And whereas in a corporate environment, you're thinking about, how do I use story to reach people outside? You can use story for your team. You can use story to promote projects. I've had engineers who were brilliant, but they had no idea how to get approval for their funds. And it's like, let me help you tell the story so that you can get your funding. And you do that and you win. So look for opportunities just to help people in small ways to use story to better their lives. And it's very rewarding.
Awesome. Promoting people along their journey. That was lovely. Louis, don't worry about the connection. We finally met each other, and we'll see each other for the yesterday panel discussion. Let's have some fires burning for Louis as gratitude, and we'll be moving on to the next speaker. Louis, thank you so much for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Everyone,
tomorrow.
y'all have the good rest of the day. Okay. Cheers.